The message came through every frequency, every screen, and every corner of Earth's fragile orbital net. A transmission, cold and deliberate, bypassed firewalls and military jammers as if they were paper curtains. In every language known to human tongues, it spoke not with rage, but with the weight of inevitability. This world has been observed, judged, catalogued. The Galactic Mandate finds your species primitive, chaotic, and unsuitable for sovereign existence. You will submit to the authority of the harmonious vanguard, or you will be pacified. You have one planetary rotation to comply. The feed cut, silence fell on a stunned planet. In the arid hills above Bakersfield, California, Thomas Reeve leaned on his mop handle in the back corridor of the Arc-Tech Research Center. He stared at the flickering maintenance monitor that had just repeated the message for the 5th time. The mop water was cooling at his feet, its faint chemical tang lost under the rising tension of the moment. People ran by, lab coats, technicians, even armed security, all scrambling for orders or exits or someone to blame. Thomas just scratched at the gray in his beard and resumed mopping a blood smear someone had dragged in from the outer gate. He'd been mopping these halls for 19 years, watching prototype exosuits go from dream to scrap, listening to engineers argue about quantum inversion engines while he wiped off their spilled coffee. He knew where the real brains of Arc-Tech hid when things went bad, and he knew the security override codes nobody bothered to change. Thomas Reeve had once worn a uniform before his name had been scrubbed from the USDF rolls, before Luna Blacksite, before the incident that left 4 operators dead and Thomas with a dishonorable discharge and a sealed record. After that, he took this job, paid under a false identity, quiet, invisible, perfect. Now the galaxy wanted Earth to kneel. Let them try, he thought. In orbit, the first ships blinked into local space like great obsidian monoliths. There were 6, each 1 kilometers long, with segmented hulls that looked like insect carapaces fused with cathedral vaults. They moved not through thrust but in tension. Gravity bent gently around them. The leading ship unfurled a ring of light from its prow, scanning every defense platform and satellite Earth had deployed. Shields collapsed, power grids flickered, nothing was fired. Not yet. Inside the United Earth Security Council chamber beneath Geneva, arguments erupted like gunfire. The Brazilian Defense Secretary accused the Chinese premier of withholding kinetic orbital data. The American representative demanded immediate deployment of Project Bunkerfire. The African Federation envoy raised a quiet hand, only to be drowned in the noise. At the far end of the chamber, Dr. Isolde Mon, formerly of the Martian Terraforming Initiative and now head of the Human Emergency Strategy Task Force, simply said, "They're not bluffing. We either act now or we go dark under their shadow." No one listened. But at Arc-Tech, Thomas moved deeper underground, past the biometric security points overridden by the admin code he'd memorized from a careless researcher 3 years back. He passed into sublevel 6 where the real prototypes were kept, not the ones they showed to visiting military liaisons. The black chamber, cryolock still hissed in the air as he stepped past rows of silent, dangerous machines, suits too unstable to test, weapons too experimental to exist. He didn't need all of them, just one. In the center of the chamber hung the Aegis frame, code designation Jotun 4. Armor alloyed from lunar-forged tungsten weave and nanoregenerative plating. It had taken 27 test pilots, all failed, but Thomas knew something they didn't, not about the frame, but about the mindset required to wield it. He stepped into the harness. Outside, the alien ships moved into formation over the equator. Clouds spiraled beneath them, like they were folding Earth into a fist. Their voice returned. It no longer spoke in tongues. It spoke in one voice, calm as the void. "We await your surrender." Inside the suit, Thomas' vitals synced, muscles remapped. The suit asked for authorization. He gave it. It asked for command. He spoke the words aloud, his voice flat. "Activate." The chamber thrummed as the suit came alive. Power surged through the walls. Backup generators screamed. From above, security alarms wailed through Arc-Tech's foundation. They knew something had breached containment. In Geneva, the Council lost contact with the Arc-Tech grid. Something had gone rogue. On the alien ship, sensor data tripped a minor alert, an anomalous heat bloom in North America. Low yield, substrategic, not a threat. The alert was dismissed. Thomas Reeve rose from the floor of the lab, encased in a mobile fortress of forgotten science. A failed experiment, an obsolete relic, but his voice was steady. "Message incoming," said the AI in his ear. "Root it," he replied. A technician's panicked voice came through. "Unknown operator, Arc-Tech just flagged a level black activation from sublevel 6. We're trying to stop it." "You won't," Thomas cut in. The voice on the other end hesitated. "Who are you?" Just a janitor, he said, and I'm going to need the back gate open. The sky above Bakersfield cracked with pressure as he launched. 12,000 feet up, sensors locked onto the nearest alien craft. He didn't hesitate. Across the planet, as world leaders bickered and satellites blinked out of orbit, a single data spike hit the global defense net. An unauthorized mech launched. No official pilot, no sanction, no protocol, but it was moving fast and it was armed. In the Galactic Mandate command node aboard the flagship, signals analyst Torva of the Zentari noticed the velocity discrepancy. Something from the surface just accelerated to Mach 9, she said. The Fleetlord turned a slow gaze toward the screen. Human, is it a missile? Torva hesitated. It appears to be piloted. That gave the Fleetlord pause. Then the unknown projectile detonated part of their lateral shield array with a kinetic spike normally impossible in atmospheric gravity. The bridge lights flickered. Recalculate threat levels, the Fleetlord said, rising. Human military. No, Torva said, no registered unit, and the signature matches one of their civilian laboratories. A moment of silence. Then the Fleetlord narrowed his gaze. Who is it? Torva tried to answer. The screen flashed a proximity alert. A suit, man-shaped, burning with plasma venting, hovered in their upper visual dome. The figure raised a weapon, primitive, crude, but too close to react. A transmission cut across their command net. The human's face appeared, aged, scarred, eyes like razors. Then he said the words that triggered 1,000 new calculations across the alien warfleet. Then come try. The feed cut. And Earth stopped kneeling. The kinetic spike hadn't just damaged the alien ship, it had forced the Mandate to recalculate humanity. In seconds, algorithms revised their species classification from pre-integrated to strategic anomaly. The Vanguard fleet repositioned in low orbit, now running full-spectrum threat analysis on the surface. They still didn't understand what had hit them. Inside the Jotun 4 frame, Thomas Reeve dove hard into the ion trail of the first alien vessel. His HUD was filled with cascading error codes and thermal stress warnings. The suit wasn't built for prolonged atmospheric flight at this speed, but he didn't care. He had seen the glint of cracked armor on the alien ship. For all their elegance, they bled like anything else. Secondary targets identified, the AI said. I don't care about secondary, Thomas growled. Bring me the command vessel. Back at Arc-Tech, chaos had rippled through every floor. Emergency personnel flooded Sublevel 6 to find only shattered mounts and magnetic scoring on the walls. Security Chief Rahin Morsi ordered the facility into lockdown, but it was too late. Global Defense Grid Command in Johannesburg had already pinged the suit's biometric sync and was feeding telemetry to every high-security terminal on Earth. In Geneva, Dr. Mons stared at the data stream in disbelief. That's not a sanctioned pilot. That mech was never cleared for live combat. General Weathers, the NATO liaison, leaned forward. Then who the hell is flying it? Thomas Reeve, she said slowly. He was presumed dead 16 years ago. What did he do? She didn't answer right away. He survived something no one else did. Above the Pacific, the alien command ship began shifting its orbit, no longer observing, now hunting. Human unit, a new voice transmitted on all combat frequencies. Deep, mechanical. You are operating unauthorized technology. Cease aggression and submit to debrief. Thomas laughed. You first. With a thought, he redirected plasma to the Jotun's jump coils and blinked 20 kilometers forward, vanishing from conventional tracking. The alien targeting AI hesitated for half a second, enough for Thomas to slam into the ship's hull near its sensor array. He fired a bolt of gravitic shear, cutting open a gash through the armor like it was rotten bark. Atmosphere vented. Small figures, alien engineers in sleek vacuum suits, were pulled into the void. Then he moved again. Inside the Mandate fleet's command chamber, the Fleetlord issued a priority directive to all planetary subjugation assets. Activate descent units, begin surface suppression. In a dozen simultaneous flashes, drop capsules rained from orbit, needle-shaped, black, and impossibly fast. They screamed down through the atmosphere over major human cities: New York, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Jakarta, Sydney. Each one housed a squad of biomechanical warforms, the Mailcar, 12 feet tall, four-limbed, capable of molecular phase blinking, and utterly loyal. They hit the ground like divine judgment. In Times Square, the first emerged, tearing through tanks like they were paper shells. In Lagos, entire blocks went dark as Mandate signal dampeners fried civilian electronics. In Mumbai, 3 Mailcar warforms liquefied a military outpost before human forces even knew they were under attack. Humanity was facing extinction. But Earth wasn't just cities and generals. It was also people like Arya Vance, a drone mechanic in Singapore who rewired a fleet of agricultural bots to fight back. Like Sergeant Mosi Tunji in Lagos, who dragged a wounded child under a destroyed bridge and used scavenge tech to disable a Mandate crawler unit with a jury-rigged EMP. Like the crew of the USS Defiance, an old orbital tug converted into a last-ditch kinetic launcher by cadets who refused to evacuate. Everywhere the Mailcar landed, they found resistance, not enough to win, but enough to slow them. Enough to make them bleed. Thomas Reeve saw the first of Earth's cities burn from orbit, saw the red trails of descent vectors falling across the globe. "Give me full power," he said. "Warning," the AI responded. "Core stability will fail within 17 minutes at this output. Then we'll finish before then." He surged again, cutting into the hull of the command ship, carving open the inner defense shell. He bypassed drones and sensor clusters, breaking deeper, heading for the bridge. The Mandate had relied on distance, on intimidation. They had never fought anyone who came into their house swinging. The inner door exploded as Thomas breached the final bulkhead. Inside, he found the Fleetlord waiting, 7 feet tall, skin of dark crystal, multiple arms, crowned with a neural lattice that shimmered like oil on steel. The Fleetlord turned, curious. "You are alone," it said. "Funny thing about humans," Thomas replied, aiming his weapon, "we don't need a crowd to cause problems." The Fleetlord didn't move. "You are not evolved, not synchronized with galactic process. What gives you this illusion of defiance?" "You mistake defiance for hope," Thomas said, "and hope for weakness." They clashed. Thomas moved like a missile. The Jotun frame's arms sang with overdriven plasma. The Fleetlord responded with kinetic dissonance waves that bent gravity around its blows. They collided again and again, blowing apart consoles and walls, tearing the bridge down around them. One of the Fleetlord's limbs pierced the Jotun's left shoulder. Thomas screamed but didn't yield. He fired the gravitic cannon point-blank, ripping half the alien's body apart. Still it stood. "Even now," it said, half collapsing, "your kind resists inevitability." Thomas planted a boot on its chest. "That's because we haven't shown you what inevitability looks like." He triggered the reactor destabilizer. The explosion tore through the ship's spine. Fire bloomed in orbit, debris rained into the upper atmosphere. The command vessel died screaming. Below, Mandate units paused. Confusion rippled through their networks. Flagship connection lost. Command lattice disrupted. Awaiting instructions. In the absence of centralized control, the Mailcar reverted to autonomous mode, less coordinated, more vulnerable. Human fighters pushed harder. Makeshift militias, repurposed construction bots, AI-guided kinetic turrets assembled from mining equipment. From the ruins, Earth struck back. But Thomas Reeve's signal vanished. No ejection pod, no distress beacon, nothing. In Geneva, Dr. Mon stood before a silent war council. "The Mandate is crippled," she said. "Not destroyed, but their leader is dead, and we've bought time. We cannot squander it." General Weathers asked the question on everyone's mind. "Is he alive?" No one answered. But deep beneath the surface of the Pacific, something crashed into the ocean and sank into the black. A shattered mech frame, cracked, sparking. Inside, a man still breathed, barely. The suit whispered, "Vitals critical. Emergency stasis initiated." Then nothing. And Earth exhaled its first breath of resistance. 60 hours after the destruction of the Mandate flagship, Earth burned in patches but stood unbroken. The Galactic Harmonious Vanguard had withdrawn to high orbit, their remaining ships holding position in a defensive wedge. No further landings, no more transmissions. The loss of their Fleetlord, an event not seen in 8 centuries, had shattered their doctrinal cohesion. The surviving captains argued silently across their quantum-linked hierarchy, unwilling to admit they had underestimated what they had called a backwater species. But Earth had paid dearly. A third of global satellite infrastructure was down. New York lay partially vitrified. Lagos was dark, its skies filled with the smoke of scorched resistance. Across South Asia, communications were a patchwork of static and field broadcasts, but the Mailcar were no longer advancing. Human irregulars had adapted, hard-coded counter-patterns into mobile drones and begun cutting down the elite alien foot soldiers. Still, Earth had no illusions. The aliens would reorganize, reinforce, return. In the depths of a subterranean bunker beneath the Siberian tundra, Dr. Isolde Mon stood at the edge of a new war map. Around her, surviving military leaders, technologists, and resistance liaisons gathered. They represented no single country now, only Earth. "Operation Breakspear is our only option," she said. "We strike first, before they stabilize, before reinforcements arrive from the outer mandate." General Seung of the Korean Unified Front leaned forward. "Strike with what? Our fleets are gutted, half our space assets are blind." "Not fleets," she replied. "People, small units, unconventional tactics. We've reverse-engineered enough from their fallen warforms to know they're not invincible. We don't fight them in the open, we make them bleed by inches. We disrupt their logistics, we hit their field processors, we remind them what war really is." Silence fell. Then a voice, faint but firm, from the back. "We'll need the ghosts." All eyes turned to Commander Arjun Sethai, formerly of Black Echo Division, a unit officially disbanded after the Lunar War. He looked tired, scarred, but his eyes gleamed. "There are still operatives out there, ones who disappeared after their orders stopped making sense. If we can find them, we have the beginnings of a strike web." Mon nodded. "Do it." Across the planet the call went out, hidden frequencies flared to life, buried caches opened, long-forgotten soldiers emerged from shadow. And in a deep-sea recovery cradle somewhere off the Mariana Trench, a signal pulsed. Biometric match confirmed. Subject Reeve Thomas. Status alive. The chamber hissed. Thomas's eyes snapped open, lungs dragged in synthetic oxygen, pain rushed in like floodwater. He was alive and beneath 3 kilometers of water. A synthetic voice greeted him. "Reactivation complete, neural pathways stabilizing." "Status," he croaked. "Unit compromised, combat readiness 12%, external threat dormant." He pushed himself upright. The stasis pod had repaired much but not all. His bones ached. Neural lag buzzed behind his eyes, but he was breathing, and the war was not over. On the surface, the human resistance had launched its first interorbital strike. A cluster of salvaged rocket frames, retrofitted with scavenged alien tech, slammed into the nearest mandate support barge in low orbit. The explosion lit the night sky over the Indian Ocean. No survivors, the message was clear. Earth would not wait to be conquered. The Mandate responded by deploying orbital drones, Autar-class enforcers, designed not for conquest but for annihilation. Each one the size of a building, each programmed to sterilize surface areas down to molecular levels. 3 launched. Only one completed its descent. In northern Kazakhstan, a drone burned a 40-mile crater before a team of resistance hackers jammed its targeting protocols and redirected its self-annihilation sequence. The blast took the drone and the entire team with it. Mon watched the satellite feed from the Siberian command bunker. "We can't keep paying this price." "Then we hit the route," came a voice from the doorway. It was hoarse, weakened, but unmistakable. Thomas Reeve stepped into the war room. He wore no armor now, just a pressure suit and eyes that looked like they'd stared into the dark heart of war and returned colder. Gasps rippled around the room. Even Sethai, hardened as he was, took a step back. "You're dead," Mon said. He shook his head. "Not yet, and neither is Earth, but if we want to win, we can't keep fighting them on our knees." "You destroyed their Fleetlord," someone muttered. "What more do you want?" Thomas looked up at the orbital map, mandate ships still circling like sharks. "I want to make them afraid." Over the next 5 days, Earth changed. The resistance unified, not under flags or governments, but under necessity. Civilians became engineers. Children carried coded messages through ruined streets. Scientists slept in bunkers, analyzing mandate wreckage. From the mountains of Afghanistan to the swamps of the Amazon, humans built weapons with whatever they had. The ghosts Sethai had promised began hitting mandate satellites, laying quantum trip mines in orbit, sabotaging localized gravwells meant to restrict Earth's launch paths. One team boarded a disabled Mandate cruiser still drifting above Australia and manually triggered its core to explode when reinforcements arrived. The Mandate reacted with shock. They had expected slow capitulation, despair. Instead, they saw calculated fury. On the 4th day, the Mandate sent a diplomat. The transmission came from a smaller vessel, non-combat, covered in ancient glyphs. "This is Envoy Varel of the 7th Accord," the alien said. Its voice shimmered with modulated overtones. You have exceeded all calculated resistance parameters. We offer a temporary ceasefire, an evaluation, a chance to be integrated. Thomas answered for Earth. He stepped into the transmission feed, eyes like stone. You sent an ultimatum, we answered, now we're sending ours. He leaned forward. Leave our skies or we'll come for your worlds. The envoy blinked its vertical eyes. That would be unwise. Try us, Thomas said. The feed ended. A moment later, the first hyperspace ripple detected by Earth's new scanners bloomed just outside the solar system. Mandate reinforcements had arrived. 4 new warships, larger than the others, bristling with spires of exotic matter, they began decelerating toward the planetary well. Thomas turned to Mon. We've got one shot. At what? He tapped the screen. Them. She stared. You want to take the fight into orbit. I want to steal one of their ships. There was silence in the bunker. Then Commander Sci-Fi stepped forward. I've got a team. Thomas nodded. Then we hit them before they can align. That night, under the auroras caused by Mandate subspace drag, humanity launched its first boarding mission, not with a fleet but with 4 experimental insertion pods, each carrying 5 souls. Each pod burned like a comet. And the stars, watching, trembled for what would come next. The insertion pods screamed into the void on columns of plasma, barely stabilized, their hulls rattling with atmospheric recoil and magnetic friction. They weren't designed for beauty. They were bullets made of defiance, sealed with the lives of the last humans willing to step off Earth's surface and into a predator's mouth. Thomas Reeve sat cradled in Pod 2, wearing a stripped-down version of the Jotun interface rig, patched with external stabilizers and enough painkillers to numb a god. Across from him sat Commander Arjun Sethai, suit gleaming black under the emergency lighting, expression grim. No one spoke. At exactly 412 kilometers above Earth's crust, the pods split formation, engaging individual magnetic trajectory rigs. The target, Mandate ship Calthoranin, one of the 4 reinforcements in low deceleration orbit, a behemoth warcruiser housing a planetary-scale bombardment array. But for all its power, it hadn't expected to be boarded. Impact in 10 seconds, came the voice of the insertion AI. Thomas reached up, locked his helmet. 9 seconds. Outside, the hull of the alien cruiser expanded, glistening with dark light. It bristled with arc pylons and automated defense spirals. No external hangars, no airlocks, just armor, beautiful and absolute. 6 seconds. Sethai's team primed the gravitic drills. 3 seconds. The pods hit. Metal screamed. Armor fractured. The boarding team exploded into the breach like a virus made of blades and bullets. They moved in zero gravity, weapons tuned to the narrow bands of energy that bypassed Mandate shielding. Thomas was the last through, shouldering a rail lance ripped from Arctech's forbidden vault. Inside, the ship felt alive. The walls pulsed faintly with light, not wires, veins, not a vessel, an organism. Mandate capital ships were part biological, grown over centuries in orbital cradles. Every surface flexed under their boots. The air tasted of ozone and ancient salt. Set-nav beacons, Sethai barked, mark fallback routes, everyone else move. The team split into 2 fire groups, one to secure the core, the other to take the command cortex. Thomas moved with the latter. They met resistance in the form of defense spores, floating orbs that emitted frequency blasts designed to shut down higher neural activity. One nearly killed the front scout before Thomas ripped it apart with a timed grav pulse. The ship fought back as a living immune system would, closing corridors, shifting angles, emitting disorienting sound patterns. But they pressed on. By the time they reached the central nexus, they had lost 3, 1 vaporized, 2 eviscerated by corridor liquefaction traps, but the cortex chamber lay ahead, a cathedral of light and motion. At its center floated the control node, a crystalline being woven of both sentience and circuitry. It turned as they entered. "You will not rewrite destiny," it said. Thomas stepped forward. "We already did." He fired. The control node shattered. The ship convulsed, lights died, systems collapsed. Across orbit, the Calthoranin went dark. In the Mandate command lattice, chaos ignited. One of their reinforcements had flatlined. The last telemetry showed humans inside the vessel. No species had ever done this. Not to the Mandate. Not to them. Stillness held for 5 seconds. Then the Mandate retaliated. The three remaining warships pivoted in synchronous formation and activated orbital burn, not slow deceleration, full dive. They began descending toward Earth on trajectories meant to overwhelm every planetary defense, every resistance hideout, every last inch of human stubbornness. This wasn't conquest anymore. It was extermination. In Geneva, the last defense nodes flared red. General Seung turned to Mon. "We won't stop them, not all three." "I know," she whispered. And then the dark ship came to life again. The Calthoranin, silent and hijacked, pulsed once with stolen power. Inside the control nexus, Thomas stood amid shattered architecture, the suit's neural lace linked into the command throne. He wasn't a pilot. He wasn't a mandate-born, but he was a survivor, a breaker of systems. He fed the ship one thing it had never known before: unpredictable will. "Let's see what you've got," he muttered. Then he turned the ship toward the others. On Earth, resistance fighters looked up as one of the alien vessels began firing on its own fleet. A mandate warship moved like a god's blade, unleashing energy arcs and hull-ripping singularities into the flanks of its kin. The Calthoranin rammed the nearest cruiser head-on, tearing into its midsection with suicidal force. The explosion lit the sky. One mandate ship gone. The second, wounded, spun out of alignment, its descent trajectory lost to gravity. Only one remained. It accelerated. Inside the Calthoranin, fires raged, systems failed, life support collapsed. Thomas hung by emergency maglocks in a chamber flooded with coolant steam. Blood dripped from his mouth. He saw the final ship barreling down. He keyed the last functional transmitter. "To anyone left," he rasped, "I need a push." A brief pause. Then a dozen voices answered. Resistance teams on the ground re-aimed salvaged plasma anchors toward low orbit. AI-guided cargo drones aligned magnetically. Even Arctech's last orbital tether fired its broken remains like a whip into the sky. They didn't target the enemy ship. They targeted him. The energy grid that had once pulled the Calthoranin from Earth now pushed it outward, slingshotting the stolen vessel into the last mandate warship at a velocity no living species should have survived. In that instant, Earth didn't wait to die. It reached into the heavens and punched extinction in the mouth. The final mandate ship cracked apart as the Calthoranin struck it with the force of a collapsing mountain. Both vessels ruptured, disintegrated, became debris and fire. And Thomas Reeve vanished inside it. There was no signal. No wreckage large enough to scan. Only silence. Then slowly the surviving pieces of the mandate fleet withdrew from orbit, not out of tactical realignment, but something deeper. They were afraid. In the aftermath, Earth didn't cheer. There was no triumph, just exhaustion. But the stars were silent. And the war, at least this one, was over. 2 months after the battle for orbit, the sky over Earth no longer burned. The last of the mandate presence had retreated to the edge of the solar system, their warships scarred and systems fractured. Recon probes tracked them lingering near Neptune's orbit, assembling in silence, watching, waiting. But they hadn't returned. Earth, against every expectation, had survived. Yet it was no longer the same planet. The cities that remained were lit not just by power grids, but by memory. Murals of the fallen covered blast-shattered walls. Rooftop gardens grew where orbital debris had struck. Communities that had once spoken in different tongues now shared food, stories, grief. The lines between nation-states blurred into the scar tissue of survival. Above, human engineers walked the outer hull of the ISS Reclamation, the first orbital platform built entirely from salvaged mandate alloys. It floated as both war memorial and staging base, part research lab, part defense station. And below, Earth's skies bristled with new launch towers, kinetic rails, and deep-orbit relay systems. The planet was not just rebuilding, it was becoming. At the center of this transformation stood the figure who had become more myth than man, Thomas Reeve. But no one had seen him since the final impact. Only fragments of the Calthoranin had been recovered. No body, no beacon. The analysts declared him KIA, some refused to believe it. Others whispered of ghosts in the machine, of unexplained uplink pings across quantum layers where no signal should exist. And then one day, something changed. In the high Atlas ranges of North Africa, inside a fortified data sanctuary known as Asher Station, a singular encrypted packet arrived. No origin, no return address, no trace. Inside was a simple message. Don't waste what we bought. Keep building. I'll be watching. It was signed only with a letter. R. That same day, across the dark side of the moon, humanity's first interstellar vessel came online. Powered by hybrid mandate cores and Earth's own emergent quantum tide engines, the Unity Ascendant stood tall on its cradle, its hull etched with the names of every continent, every resistance cell, and one phrase engraved across its prow. Then come try. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was a declaration. From the underground labs of Iceland to the high-altitude observatories of the Andes, from orbital shipyards over Jakarta to the gene fusion vaults of New Sierra Europa, Earth had changed. The Mandate had tried to break them with superiority, but in doing so they had awakened something older, deeper, forged in 1,000 years of rising and falling empires. They had awakened humanity's refusal to die quietly. In the Mandate's far councils, those who had never expected to need war again, their most ancient overseers gathered. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a pre-integration world had defeated not just an expeditionary force, but a full military vanguard. The overseers spoke not in language, but in harmonics, old, slow frequencies that had not changed since the first conquered. One tone dominated them all. Reassessment. The galactic order had stagnated for 1,000 years. Progress had plateaued, exploration had been replaced with arbitration, conquest with assimilation. But now a new variable had emerged. A world of chaos, ambition, and contradiction. A species that saw a wall and asked how high it could climb before breaking through. A people who buried their dead in cities that kept fighting. Humanity. And so, for the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Harmonious Mandate initiated a full-cycle convening. They would not attack again. Not yet. They would study. And beyond the edge of Sol's heliosphere, buried inside a small fragment of Mandate wreckage drifting past the orbit of Pluto, a pod stirred. Inside, a figure opened his eyes. He was older, thinner, one side of his body partially reconstructed with adaptive polyframe grafts. His breath was slow, his vision unfocused, but he was alive. The AI inside whispered, "Reeve, you're not done." He smiled. Not yet. Earth didn't need a hero anymore. It had become something far greater. It had become a spark. A species that would not be molded or tamed. A force that would go outward not to conquer but to challenge. Not to become the next tyrants, but to break every order that had forgotten how to fight for its future. As the stars waited, humanity launched its first true fleet. Not in submission, not in fear, but in purpose. To build, to learn, to warn, and if the galaxy still didn't understand, then they were welcome to come try.